Neither American Airlines nor the FAA have offered comment about the most recent incident. We are continuing to see these sorts of things. We are continuing to encounter, well, we are not, but pilots are, these strange things. Now, that Learjet was flying for a military contractor, Phoenix Air, and it describes the encounter to local news outlets. U.S. Navy flyers have reported similar encounters off the eastern seaboard and the Pacific. It is unlikely an errant test missile could have ventured into commercial airspace. It is also highly improbable the object was some kind of clandestine aircraft. The Mount Dora military operating area is located near where the American Airlines crew observed the object, but the pilots would have been alerted that the restricted airspace was hot. In 2017, the War Zone, which is a publication, reported that F-15s were scrambled to investigate an object that several airline crews reported over Northern California and Oregon. So, one of my questions here is, part of me thinks it's like the Air Force screwing with the Navy or vice versa. It is a test thing. I don't think it's the Chinese or the Russians. I don't actually think that when you read about the Chinese weaponry and military facilities like their aircraft carriers, how frequently they break down. So much of China is veneer. It's underneath, things don't work. I don't think they're capable of it. So is it an alien? Is it a demon? Is it an angel? Is it an American weapons system? No other country is really capable of something like that. I'm just fascinated by these stories. But now there's another story here that you got to ask, or another angle of this. Have these things been happening for a long time, but they're just getting reported more often now? That's another issue. Are they just getting reported more often now? Because my sense is that that's actually, it's not that this is new. It's that it's just becoming increasingly more common to, number one, the number of planes in the air, and number two, the media seizing on these reports in light of the New York Times stories about UFOs. Makes you wonder what's going on out there, though. Now, when we come back, Mr. Potato Head has to be gender neutral now. It's going to be Potato Head, not Mr. and not Mrs., except it still is. Hasbro tries to have it both ways. Woko Haram will not be happy. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Feel free to call in. It is Friday. We're a little looser with calls on Friday. Also, you can follow me on social media at EW Erickson, anywhere it counts. One day, I feel like I should trademark EW Erickson so other people can't use it, because I mean, Twitter, Facebook, my website, ewerickson.com, on and on it goes. Nonetheless, you can follow me all over the place. You can call in. I'm interactable. Instagram's the best place. I'm going to cook this weekend, and my kid's got a soccer game, so you can check it all out on Instagram. Friends, well, first they came for Mr. Potato Head. This story is kind of ridiculous. Hasbro is trying to have it both ways. They're trying to solomonically split the baby when it comes to Mr. Potato Head. You're still going to be able to get Mr. Potato Head. And you're still going to be able to get Mrs. Potato Head. But Hasbro has decided that they're going to rebrand the product as Potato Head. And they will come in Mr. or Mrs. What about gender non-binary, non-normative? What about Mr. Potato Head chooses to identify as Mrs. Potato Head? Why should you have to go out and buy a Mrs. Potato Head? Now, the last time that I had a Mr. Potato Head where I had to attach the male reproductive organ, I knew that they had probably gone too far. Because, you know, you open up the backside of the Mr. Potato Head and you pull out the male reproductive organ from the backside of the potato. It's a little bit disconcerting, except for the fact there never was one. The Mr. Potato Head, Mrs. Potato Head has never had a uterus. Mr. Potato Head has never had any sort of testicular fortitude. They're potatoes. But Mr. Potato, is Toy Story, as an aside, is Toy Story going to have to, you know, Disney's adding insensitivity warnings to all of its movies? You can't watch Peter Pan now without finding out that this is a negative depiction of Native Americans. Or the Muppets. There are warnings now on the Muppets. The Muppets are bad now. Will Toy Story 2, 3, and 4, will they have to come with insensitivity warnings? We're sorry, there were gendered potatoes in Mr. Potato in Toy Story. We recognize that the world has moved on from genders, and it may be insensitive that there's a boy with propensity to play with boy toys, and his younger sister with a propensity to play with girl toys, and gendered potatoes in the process. Boko Haram, the American terrorist group of social justice warriors who are intent on destroying any vestiges of normal society, they have come for the potato. And I don't know how Hasbro can get away with having gendered potatoes still. They're trying to rebrand it to make you think that they're not having gendered potatoes. But the potatoes are gendered. They don't come with the reproductive organs, which, you know, I don't really want to see a potato with that. It's like, you know, you drive past the pickup trucks and the guys have the and they hanging off the, I find it all gross and you got kids, you want your kids acting like that? No, but nonetheless, why are we still having gendered potatoes? They're making a big deal out of it. They made a big deal out of it and then caused so much backlash, they had to come right back out and say, well, actually, we're not getting rid of Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. We're just branding the whole as Potato Head because we don't want to be disrespectful to Mrs. Potato Head. Why not brand it Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head? But what if she doesn't want to be married? She may want to be a divorcee. She may want to be divorced, so it needs to be Mr. and Ms. Potato Head. But why not just sell one? And you can shove all the genders up the potato's backside, and you can pull the gender you want out of the backside of the potato. Now, I'm not being euphemistic here. That's you shove everything up the backside of the potato. It's got a butt, and you open the butt and you cram in everything. You cram in the eyeballs. You cram in the mustache, the glasses, the eyeballs, the hat. It all goes up the backside of Mr. Potato Head. Somewhere, someone in Hollywood is getting excited by the idea. Why not shove all the genders up? You could have 2,000 genders up the rectum of the potato and just pull out which one you want. Today, he wants to be gender non-conforming altogether and emo. So it's going to be black-clad and goth-like. And today he wants to be half male, half female. And so you can have the toupee on one side and the long blonde hair. And why? Why is Mrs. Potato Head blonde anyway? That's stereotypical as well. It is the worst of stereotypes, is it not? It is totally gendered. You have to decide, do I want my potato to be male or female? What about all of the other genders? Somewhere, there is an activist being prompted by the left to say, the potatoes don't represent me. My pronouns are not he or she. My pronouns are ZGB. Bebop boom. Where's the potatoes for that person? Why is Hasbro only giving us 2 genders for the potato head? And they've got to be married. What about the single woman? Single and ready to mingle. Nope. She is already committed to Mr. Potato Head. It's got to be Mrs. Potato Head, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. What if they go through a divorce? All of the things you have to think about. Life was so much simpler when the potato head came out and you could just pull out the masculine or the feminine from its rectum and put it on its head. You knew, oh, well, this one's got long blonde hair and jewels, must be the female. Nowadays, you watch the Disney Channel, and that would be the boy. I'm really upset with the bigoted, closed-minded nature of Hasbro to strip the Mr. Potato Head branding and make a big deal out of how open-minded they are, and then bind the potatoes to 2 genders. I mean, I listen, hang on, where is this? We talked about this before. Genders, Georgia State University had some sort of website, and they were allowing you to fill out a form, and it had multiple genders you could choose from. It had male, female, gender non-conforming, gender non-binary, on and on it went. Let's see. Oh, whoa! There are 64 of them now. There is, let's see, assigned female at birth, agender, alia gender, which is a non-binary gender identity that doesn't fit into existing gender schemes or constructs. Amab, assigned male at birth. Androgen, someone who has a gender presentation or identity that's gender neutral, androgynous, or has both masculine and feminine characteristics. That could be it, Potato Head. Aporagender, both an umbrella term and non-binary gender identity that describes the experience of having a specific gender that's different from male, female, or a combination of the two. Bigender, someone who identifies with 2 distinct genders. Binarism, generally binarism, refers to the gender systems and schemas that are based on the existence of 2 opposing parts. Body dysphoria, boy, B-O-I, a term primarily used in LGBTQIA plus communities that describes someone who has a presentation, sexuality, or gender that's described as boyish, butch, cisgender, cisnormativity, cissexism, demi-boy. What is a demi-boy? I am a demigod, but what is a demi-boy? The non-binary gender identity describes someone who partially identifies as boy, man, or masculine. A demi boy can be cisgender or trans. There's demigender. There's demigirl. There's I'm not going there. Don't go there. Feminine of center, feminine presenting, female to male, gender apathetic, gender binary, gender dysphoria, gender expression, gender identity, gender neutral pronouns, gender nonconforming, gender normative, gender fluid, intergender, masculine of center, masculine presenting, maverick. Ooh, that's like French Tom Cruise, maverick. Male and multigender. You can be bigender, trigender, pangender, polygender. You can be crazy town. Seriously. I'm sorry. You've degendered the brand, but you're leaving the gendered potato heads. How is that not bigotry in the 21st century? How is that not bigotry? The larger thing here is it goes back to another point. By the way, Oreo yesterday, Oreo, crunchy on the outside, creamy center. Oreo has announced that there are such things as trans people. Oreo wants you to know trans people exist. Okay, trans people exist. We know that, Oreo. Why do we need woke cookie now? There's a larger point here. Corporate America is totally down with the insanity of the present age. They are totally down with the insanity of the present age, and it's one reason why I think people on the right have to play differently. They've got to be the nicer and the less crazy. Be nice, be less crazy, love your neighbor. Don't go down the road of woko haram. Funny to me. It's actually very funny. The number of people on the left who, how could you say love your neighbor and say woko haram? Because I can laugh at your stupidity. Loving your neighbor doesn't mean I can't still have a sense of humor and laugh at lunacy. Rand Paul is in all sorts of hot water because he dared to confront the guy who wants to be the Assistant Health and Human Services Secretary over gender mutilation. That man, who is now a woman, just listen to the exchange.
Let it go into the record that the witness refused to answer the question. The question is a very specific one. Should minors be making these momentous decisions? For most of the history of medicine, we wouldn't let you have a cut sewn up in the ER. But you're willing to let a minor take things that prevent their puberty, and you think they get that back? You give a woman testosterone enough that she grows a beard, you think she's going to go back looking like a woman when you stop the testosterone? You have permanently changed them. Infertility is another problem. None of these drugs have been approved for this. They're all being used off-label. I find it ironic that the left that went nuts over hydroxychloroquine being used possibly for COVID are not alarmed that these hormones are being used off-label. There's no long-term studies. We don't know what happens to them. We do know that there are dozens and dozens of people who've been through this who regret that this happened and a permanent change happened to them. And, if you've ever been around children, 14-year-olds can't make this decision. In the gender dysphoria clinic in England, 10% of the kids are between the ages of 3 and 10. We should be outraged that someone's talking to a 3-year-old about changing their sex. I can't vote for you if you can't make a decision.
Thank you so much, Senator Paul.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. It just, this is, the whole thing is fascinating to me, to be quite honest with you. To be really honest with you, we've reached a point in society where the inmates are running the place. And corporate America is all in on it. And the main reason is because the left does tend to boycott more. Politics has become their religion. And by the way, I don't actually think that people on the right need to engage in aggressive boycotting. But I think if you as a personal decision decide to avoid Oreo because Oreo's gone in so woke, they'll feel the repercussions there. I'm always loath to advocate pressure campaigns or to bully other people into doing it. I may do it and say I'm not doing it, but not calling for an organized boycott. I don't think I should be telling you guys what to do. And I would buy a kid a potato head. I'd buy a kid a Mr. Potato Head. But I don't think that this decision actually, it just being very serious here for a minute about a really dumb topic, if we're honest about it, I don't think this is sustainable by Hasbro. It's not sustainable because you're still having a Mr. and a Mrs., not a Miss. And you're still separating out the genders. You're not letting the kid who owns the potato head decide which gender the potato head should be. You're not putting all of the 2,000 genders up the backside of the potato and letting the kid choose. You're forcing them to choose male or female. You're forcing them into a binary decision that Woko Haram says is no longer legit. So I wouldn't be surprised if in a year we find out that Hasbro has had to up the price of the potato head and put the blonde wig and the toupee inside it and the mustache so that kids themselves can pick the gender. That's where we're headed. You can't go less than that. Hasbro's trying to split the baby. No one's going to be happy.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson.
Hi there. It is Erick Erickson here. There's breaking news none of you care about except me. So Shaquille O'Neal owns there's a historic Krispy Kreme in Atlanta. And and it's on Ponce. If any of you went to Georgia Tech, you're probably familiar with it. It's old school Krispy Kreme building. They don't have a lot of them like that left. And investigators, it burned to the ground. Investigators now believe it was arson. Investigators believe the fire was intentionally set on the exterior of the building. The fire spread quickly to the interior of the structure, causing catastrophic damage. Officials are offering a $10,000 reward. They have released surveillance photos from the night of the fire showing a person who appears to be a man wearing all black. Well, that's sad. Someone would burn down a Krispy Kreme. That's just sad. I'm sorry. It's sad to me. Someone would burn down Shaquille O'Neal's Krispy Kreme. He's going to rebuild it, by the way. He said he's rebuilding it, which is great. I'm a big fan of Krispy Kreme. There aren't enough of them around. There should be. And I don't really like the ones where they don't make them in-house, where they ship them in and then you run them through the machine. Although, I got to tell y'all, let's be honest here. About 90% of y'all would pay big money to be able to run through the machine, the glazing machine. I would totally pay money to go through the glaze machine. All right, Sama in Athens, I'm going to go to you next. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my opinion. It's great to be a citizen of a country where you can say something or criticize a president and you can still go home alive, you know.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. And something I did learn when I came to the United States, you have always give credit when credit is due. And I have to say thank you very much for Governor Kemp for the amount of energy, education, and sincerity to help Georgians or to protect the Georgians from the virus and the economy and everything he's doing. You know that there is 58,000 people is getting the $1,000 bonus very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And also to bring to the attention of the voter, it's how important to put the right man in the right job.
Yeah.
Forget about Democrat and Republican. You know,
right.
It's very important. You know, we are an ag state, but who is representing us now? The state board,
right.
South and Warback, instead of Lafler. And how important to put people who have a first-hand experience of work. Governor Kemp was a builder. Kelly Lafler, she was a farmer.
Right. Yeah, listen, I agree with you. And it definitely, look, I got to let you go there because I got about 30 seconds. But you're right. He's got the, it's like my relative I've mentioned on air says he's got rough hands. You can tell he was a builder. He actually used his hands and he knows what he's doing to focus on small businesses. And unfortunately, the congressional Democrats, including Warnock and Ossoff, are going to punish Georgia
15.
for daring to reopen and be economically successful. I got to talk about that when we come back. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You know, I had on the governor yesterday, and one of the things that he pointed out is that the Democrats' COVID relief package will punish states like Georgia that reopened early and stayed open and got their economy up going again. It will punish the people of Georgia. And Georgia just elected 2 Democrats to the U.S. Senate for the first time since the late 90s. And the Democrats are going to punish the state because Brian Kemp dared to reopen the state. But more than that. What's also going to happen is the Democrats are going to take money out of Medicare and Medicaid to fund a pension bailout for unions. That's part of their plan now. Not only that, as the Senate parliamentarian has ruled that they can't raise the minimum wage. So Chuck Schumer is going to insert a provision into the COVID package that companies that don't pay their employees $15 an hour are going to be taxed at a higher rate. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do. They want to punish employers who don't do it, which they say is the end run around the rule. I don't know that that's going to work. That's going to scuttle their legislation. That's going to kill the legislation. And at this point, I think they probably want it to die because they think they can blame the Republicans. It's the games they play. Remember, this isn't about recovery. This is about partisan gamesmanship. This isn't about the virus. It's about bailing out unions in blue states. It really doesn't have a whole lot to do with solving the problems we're dealing with right now. And Democrats may want to complain about this, but it is the truth. I mean, listen to Katie Porter is a progressive Democrat, was on MSNBC. And, you know, there are plenty of studies out there that show that a higher minimum wage results in small businesses having to reduce their work staff. Listen to this dodge.
So Senator Braun was on with my colleague Chuck Todd a moment ago, and he said he didn't oppose raising the minimum wage, but he was saying that a one-size-fits-all for every company across America for that wage might not work. It might not allow some companies to retain as many employees. What do you make of that argument?
We've already built that into the bill. This is simply a delay tactic. These were arguments that were raised and were really considered. And so we've built a phase into the minimum wage. It doesn't turn into $15 an hour tomorrow. It phases in. And we are already in the midst of businesses having to make a lot of important decisions. So this increase in wage is phased in. And we've also seen, by the way, that it's some of the largest businesses in the country that employ a lot of minimum wage workers. This argument that this will only affect small businesses isn't right. This is also about making sure that the largest corporations in our country step up and pay every single employee a living wage as well.
Notice the dodge. She can't answer. She can't answer about causing increased unemployment. In fact, Congress itself says an increased minimum wage will cause unemployment to go up, and will then actually impact the budget negatively because of increased unemployment benefits that have to be paid. And the Democrats don't want to answer that. You know, the minimum wage is actually bad policy, particularly when you see that so many major corporations are already doing it. You don't need Congress to do it. It can't be one size fits all because a small business in Unadilla, Georgia, or Greenville, Mississippi, it does not have the same base of customer support to be able to pay it as a business in Atlanta or Houston or Dallas or New York. It should be regional. It doesn't need to be national. It doesn't need to be uniform national. But the Democrats are so into one size fits all that's a problem. Now, another problem for them is Neera Tanden. Neera Tanden is she's the nominee for Office of Management and Budget. The best the Democrats can offer is that it is sexist. It is discriminatory. Listen to Jim Messina, who ran Barack Obama's campaign.
That clip you showed of Senator Cornyn was the most hypocritical thing I have seen all day. I mean, here's a guy who's saying, oh, she was mean to both parties. You just supported Donald Trump, who said the most vile and worst things I've ever seen in politics on Twitter every day, and you advocated for his election. And now suddenly you have problems with Neera Tanden's tweets. And I do think it's interesting that the three people the Republicans have chosen to fight over, Tanden, Becerra, and Haaland, are three minority candidates for a Republican Party that has serious minority problems. Taking these three fights is an interesting issue, an interesting decision to a party that's now out of power and needs some minority votes to get back in power someday.
That was Jim Messina. Now listen to this conversation on MSNBC between Andrea Mitchell and Senator Klobuchar.
I just want to quickly ask you about Neera Tanden and some of your colleagues, Senator Manchin opposing her for her past tweets and for being too partisan. But these same people voted for Rick Grinnell, who's probably more toxic on Twitter than anyone else who's ever been confirmed to be an ambassador. And certainly the former president, Donald J. Trump, was the worst bullier in chief on Twitter.
So I think Neera would be...
Is this a case of sexism or,
Okay, let me start with Neera Tanden.
Seems like a double standard.
I hate to go to your complaints before I get to her. She would be a great director of management and budget. The president is standing by her firmly, looking for votes, of course, on the Republican side. Washington, things change. Hugh Hewitt wrote a column asking Republicans to support her, saying that, he may not agree with her on everything, but she's a tough person for a tough job. And she has apologized for those tweets very clearly. And as you said, Senator Manchin has not supported President Trump. Let's make that clear. But a number of the Republicans really closed their eyes to those tweets. And she's apologized. And I think she'd be good at the job. And most importantly, the President of the United States thinks she'd be good at the job. So I know they're continuing to work on getting support for her.
So there's a... Let's talk about this. I'm actually shocked to hear that any Republicans have come out, anyone, anywhere, including Hugh Hewitt, to say that, you should put Neera Tanden in this position. No, you shouldn't. She was head of a partisan progressive group. There's no reason to put her in charge of it. She was already moving people into the operation who could turn it into a further political operation. She doesn't need to be there. The Democrats have run out. What about the presidency? Donald Trump had nasty tweets, and the Republicans, they wouldn't criticize him. They weren't opposed to him. He was the lawfully elected president of the United States. The voters put him in charge. They would have never appointed Donald Trump to a position. They don't have to appoint Neera Tanden, and guess what? They don't want to. But there's more to it than this. Not only is she a toxic person, but she has a cult-like fan base of toxic people around her. Now, again, you can say, but Trump. Well, if you're an intellectual moron, yes, you could say, but Trump. Never mind the fact he ran for an election and he beat Hillary Clinton. But Russia. Well, Neera Tanden is one of the people who has peddled the Russia conspiracy. She also peddled a conspiracy that Anthony Kennedy was bribed. She's a toxic person who didn't win a presidential election, and so Congress doesn't have to deal with her, and they don't want to deal with her. Democrats don't want to deal with her. Democrats are happy the Republicans are doing what they're doing because they don't want to deal with her either. Sometimes toxic, distasteful people go down in flames, and we should let them and not be writing op-eds on how, she's a firm, tough person. We should put her in that position. No. Pay attention to the Republicans who are telling you Neera Tanden should be in that position and start ignoring those people. She's not a pleasant person. She's a partisan hack and hatchet woman for Hillary Clinton in the past. The progressives don't particularly care for her, nor do the Republicans. She has not won an election for president. They don't have to confirm her. They're not going to confirm her. When I say she's a toxic person who cultivated a cult of toxic personality well before Donald Trump was around, it's amazing how much the Democrats who are outraged by Trump are now, well, they let Trump do it. I guess it's our turn. We get to do it as well. After years of saying, we would never do this. Yeah, you're doing it for her, and you did it for her before Donald Trump was even on the scene. A Washington Post reporter showed Lisa Murkowski one of Neera Tanden's nasty tweets about Lisa Murkowski. Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska, was unaware that Tanden had tweeted nasty things about Lisa Murkowski. That reporter is now getting death threats and attacks. She's Asian, attacking her race, making disparaging comments about her. The Washington Post has had to come out and defend their reporter for doing what reporters do. Asking questions, and when the individual has no knowledge, showing them the evidence so that they can form an opinion and give their response. Neera Tanden has tweeted nastily about a bunch of people, and the thing is, Lisa Murkowski wasn't going to vote for her anyway. But there's something else here you got to understand. Neera Tanden is why the filibuster is going to remain. Look at the pressure campaign on Lisa Murkowski right now. Look at the pressure campaign on Kristen Sinema. Look at the pressure campaign on Joe Manchin. If you get rid of the filibuster, particularly in a 50-50 Senate, if you were to get rid of the filibuster, the pressure campaigns on everything would be nonstop and never ending. The pressure campaign on each individual senator would be overwhelmingly intense, particularly against Collins, Murkowski, Sinema, against Joe Manchin, and a couple others. You would have intense, constant pressure campaign against them. They don't want that. These senators don't want that every day. As long as you got to have 60 to break through, then the pressure campaign can't be that overwhelming. But with nominations now, there is no filibuster. And so the pressure campaign can target one individual and overwhelm them with pressure, flood the zone and say, it's this guy. This is the one we've got to persuade. And it makes each of them overwhelmed by the contact. It overwhelms their office. They can't handle their constituent service. They're being distracted by this sort of stuff. You keep the filibuster in place for legislation, that doesn't happen. And they know it. The Democrats know this too, by the way. A lot of the Democrats who publicly say, let's get rid of the filibuster, they actually know they can say that because it's not going to be gotten rid of, and they really don't want it to be gotten rid of. Even Kamala Harris, just a few years ago, was demanding the preservation of the legislative filibuster. And she got her wish. Because they see what's happening right now to Manchin and Sinema, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins on Neera Tanden. They see the toxic cult of personality around someone like Neera Tanden coming out of the woodwork to demand that she be confirmed or else. And they don't want that on legislation, because that would happen on virtually every piece of legislation has a constituency. Every one of them would be subject to that pressure campaign. They don't want it. So one of the good things to come out of this Neera Tanden situation is it reminds senators again, they got to preserve the legislative filibuster to avoid being bullied and badgered. And as a result of the Neera Tanden nomination, which, by the way, why did they even nominate her? There have been so many stories. What went wrong with the Neera Tanden nomination? What went wrong is you nominated a terrible person who people didn't like, who burned bridges and didn't get elected president of the United States. And I come back to, it boggles my mind to see some Republicans come out, punditry, come out and say, well, we shouldn't be confirming OMB anyway, or, well, you should put her in because she's highly qualified and competent. Pay no attention to her record running Center for American Progress. You do not want that person in charge of the federal budget. And she's not going to be. Couldn't happen to a nicer person.
You're listening to the Erick Erickson Show, the perfect
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. Did you know we bombed Syria? That's right. The Joe Biden's first, I guess he's strutting his stuff now. The U.S. military carried out an airstrike against an Iranian-backed militia stronghold in Syria. In the first known, keyword there, known military action by Joe Biden, multiple facilities were struck by American F-15 fighter jets that targeted Iraqi border-based Shia militia groups, Kataib Hezbollah and Kataib Saeed al-Shahoda. Both forces are suspected of having received funding and military support from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. The senior official said the strike was a shot across the bow and a defensive strategy intended to deter Iran and its militia from launching rockets at U.S. forces in the region, like the recent attacks in Iraq. The Defense Department later confirmed the strikes. The strikes were authorized in response to recent attacks against Americans and coalition personnel in Iraq and to ongoing threats to those personnel. 2 rockets landed within the U.S.'s Green Zone in Baghdad Monday, falling near the U.S. Embassy and marking the 3rd attack of its kind within a week. The Green Zone is several miles wide and houses the U.S. Embassy and other government buildings. Though Monday's strike reported no casualties, a rocket fired in Erbil, Iraq last week killed several people. An American service member and multiple American contractors were injured. So the Biden administration, we're going to lob missiles into the desert to deter Iran, but we're going to condemn President Trump for taking out the mastermind of Iran's terrorist regime. That makes no sense, but there you have it. It's all performative. They're still trying to get Iran back into a nuclear deal when it was a bad deal. It actually kind of is a reminder of the intellectual dishonesty that's out there right now. The intellectual dishonesty that we see from so many Democrats on how to handle Iran. They really do pretend that it was a good deal. They pretend that it was that it was worthwhile. The Iran deal that let Iran in private build up nuclear capacity. I really do think that part of the thinking here is from the Democrats is that it's bad that just the United States and the Soviet Union, now Russia, China, some of the big countries, and now is Pakistan and India, they got nukes. Everybody should have nukes now. You know, if everybody had nukes, we could all deter each other. I really do think that's part of the thinking from some of the Democrats out there on this stuff. It's outlandish. But there it is. It's outlandish. I personally think that we need to be even more aggressive on Iran. And I'm not saying we need to go to war, but there are ways to continuously, constantly undermine the Iranian regime. By the way, there are parts of Iran today that are in riot because the nation's economy is garbage. The Iranian people are actually wonderful people. One of my best friends growing up in Dubai was from Iran. They are wonderful people, and the majority of them at this point are pro-Western. They've always been, the majority of them, pro-America. The death to America people aren't actually the majority of Iranians. But the people who are death to America control the country, control the government, control the military, control the spies, control the banks. But the Iranian people overwhelmingly, particularly the younger Iranian people, want freedom. It seems like we should help put them on a course towards further instability for the government instead of trying to play kissy face with a bunch of people who want death to America and death to Israel. It's a shame that we're at that point. The Biden administration genuinely, in my mind, doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of what it's advocating. It doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of what it wants to do with a terrorist rogue regime. All it knows is whatever George Bush would do, let's do the opposite. And, you know, there's some merit to that, but when you're letting the Iranians essentially develop nuclear reactor capacity, claiming, oh, well, they won't build bombs from this. They'll try. And by the way, you don't need a nuclear weapon. Build a dirty bomb. take some of the uranium that you would use for a nuclear power plant and spread it around a city in an explosion and it renders it inhabitable, then naivete, and I don't actually think it's naivete. I actually think that they think this stuff will work, and to some degree, they don't care that you have real good reasons to defer it, real good reasons to oppose it. It's time to take on the Iranian regime. We don't have to do it with a full-scale war. We can destabilize them. We should destabilize them. And I don't trust the Biden administration and the people around the Biden administration to do that. I think they're more likely to try to destabilize Israel than to destabilize Iran. And we should worry about that as well. When we come back, speaking of groups we need to destabilize, teachers' unions, even liberals in the New York Times are starting to complain about the teachers' unions overplaying their hand when it comes to keeping schools across America shut down. Hello and welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. Glad to have you with me this Friday. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. It's Friday. Oh, we made it. It has been a rough, long, never-ending week. You know, it's kind of 2 weeks ago, I really thought I had missed a day. The week went by so fast. This week, today, could not get here fast enough. And tomorrow, we have back-to-back soccer games starting at 9 a.m. for my son. Ooh. But we go because we love. All right. Friends, we need to discuss the teacher. I'm actually really tired of talking about the teacher. I feel there are occasional things I feel obligated to talk about, even if I'm tired of talking about it. But this one, I'm actually really fascinated by this. Nicholas Kristof is a progressive. He is of the left. And he's got a column in the New York Times. School closures have failed America's children. Let me read you some of this. Flags are flying at half-staff across the United States to commemorate the 500,000 American lives lost to the coronavirus. But there's another tragedy we haven't adequately confronted. Millions of American schoolchildren will soon have missed a year of in-person instruction, and we may have inflicted permanent damage on some of them and on our country. The reluctance of many Republicans to wear masks and practice social distancing is one reason so many Americans are dead. Blame the GOP, of course. But the educational losses are disproportionately the fault of Democratic governors and mayors who too often let schools stay closed even as bars opened, and medical marijuana dispensaries and recreational marijuana dispensaries. The blunt fact, no pun intended, is that the Democrats, including those who run the West Coast from California through Oregon and Washington State, who have presided over one of the worst blows to the education of disadvantaged Americans in history. The result? More dropouts, less literacy and numeracy, widening race gaps, and long-term damage to some of our most marginalized youth. The San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank this month estimated that educational disruptions during this pandemic may increase the number of high school dropouts over 10 years by 3.8%, while also reducing the number of college-educated workers in the labor force. This will shrink the incomes of Americans for 70 years until the last of today's students leave the workforce, the bank said. What that doesn't capture is the human toll. Rich kids going to private schools glide on through life mostly unaffected, while low-income children often don't even have internet to attend Zoom classes. I'm writing this from rural Oregon, where some homes have neither internet nor cell phone service. I wrote recently about my old buddy Mike Stepp, who dropped out of high school, couldn't get a good job, self-medicated with alcohol and meth, and recently died homeless. I fear that our educational failures during this pandemic will produce countless more tragedies like Mike's. Bellwether Education Partners, a nonprofit focused on underserved students, estimates that as many as 3 million children in the United States have missed all formal education, in person or virtual, for almost a year. We have to acknowledge that there is a large percentage of kids that have disappeared. Students who have never logged in or logged in and never fully engaged, said Melissa Connolly, chief executive of One Goal, a nonprofit that does outstanding work with low-income high school students. As of January 29th, almost 10% fewer high school seniors had submitted FAFSA financial aid forms, a sign that some are losing the chance to attend college. Closures also exacerbate racial inequity. Not inequality anymore, inequity. According to McKinsey & Company, fifth graders in schools with mostly students of color mastered only 37% of the math that usually would be expected. Yes, it's hard to open schools during a pandemic, but private schools have managed to, and that's true not only of rich boarding schools, but also of strapped Catholic schools. As a nation, we fought to keep restaurants and malls open, but we didn't make schools a similar priority, so needy children were left behind. The evidence on remote learning suggests that despite the best efforts of teachers, it doesn't work for a large share of kids. says Emily Oster, a Brown University economist who has studied the issue. I think we've deprioritized children in a way that will do long-term damage. What are the risks of opening schools? We now have a great deal of data in the United States and abroad comparing areas that reopened schools versus those that kept them closed. As the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found, in-person learning in schools has not been associated with substantial community risk. The British Medical Journal this week put it this way: closing schools is not evidence-based and harms children. That's Nicholas Kristof, a progressive, writing in the New York Times, calling out Democrats for their policies. And now this. This is from Stephanie Jones. Jones is a teaching professor at the University of Georgia in the Department of Education. Listen to this. When Betsy DeVos was appointed Secretary of Education by Donald Trump in 2017, public school educators and public school education advocates dropped their jaws in disbelief. A wealthy donor to conservative Republican candidates, DeVos was known to be an advocate for privatizing public education through school vouchers and charter schools, with a particular interest in using taxpayer money to support schools with religious affiliations. DeVos was not an educator herself, but simply a wealthy donor with a rigid ideological mission. Boo freaking who, by the way. Fast forward to 2021, and educators across the country celebrated the end of DeVos' term when Joe Biden was elected. The Trump administration had not been kind to public education, with one ironic exception. They waived state testing during the pandemic. Joe Biden's a Democrat. He ran on strengthening union and worker rights, supporting youth rights in schools, reinvesting in public education, advancing policies for racial justice. He even nominated a Puerto Rican public educator from a working class background with strong beliefs about equality, equity, and justice, Miguel Cardona, as Secretary of Education. All of that makes Biden very good for public education, youth, and educators, and then with a single high-stakes decision to mandate states give standardized tests in 2021 during a multi-layered crisis this country is in, he has sucker punched every educator and student. Me. Okay. I need to note that this person, Stephanie Jones, a Joseph Meigs Distinguished Teaching Professor at the University of Georgia, the Department of Educational Theory and Practice, who teaches courses on teachers as writers, feminist theory and pedagogy, social class and poverty. This is the woman indoctrinating future teachers of America, and she highlights every reason, while attacking Betsy DeVos for not being an educator who wants to allow kids to go to private school. She highlights every single reason why Betsy DeVos was right. This is a woman criticizing the Biden administration for forcing standardized tests this year, a teaching professor, and she highlights every single reason why we need more Betsy DeVos and less people like this woman. Joe Biden is a Democrat. He ran on strengthening union and worker rights, supporting youth's rights in schools, reinvesting in public education, and advancing policies for racial justice. Now, when she says youth's rights in schools, there's a link. What is the link to? Joe Biden expanding transgender rights in public schools. This is a person teaching other people how to be teachers. It's all about indoctrination. She's attacking Betsy DeVos for wanting to allow kids to go to private school and undermining public education. And what is public education for her? Why is Joe Biden good? Well, he's a Democrat. He likes unions, transgender advocacy, and racial justice. I thank God Almighty that my children do not go to public school. I genuinely thank the Lord in heaven that I am blessed with a job that pays well enough that I can afford private school and would sacrifice if I needed to get my kids into private school or homeschool them. because government-run schools in America are increasingly focused on not educating your children, but indoctrinating your children, making your children engage in groupthink and right think as opposed to rightly thinking. They have insisted on indoctrinating your children in the morality of the left, which is godless, secular, hostile to people of faith, hostile to traditional American values. And they don't want to teach your kids now. Many public schools don't even want to open. There was audio out of another school board that is blasting parents. You know, the Oakland school board outside of San Francisco, they all resigned after open mic revealed them to just have awful opinions of parents, referring to parents in vulgar, awful, pejorative terms. Here's another school board.
And we can present it for vote. And Charter, if you wish to vote no, you are more than welcome to, or you can.
I know what I'm welcome to do, you guys. I do. And I know that what we're doing is wrong. So how are we forcing people? That seems like a very white supremacist ideology, to force people to comply with, and conform. Just letting you know. Privilege. Check it, you guys. I'm at. So I don't want to be a part of forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to do. That's what slavery is. I'm not going to be a part of it.
Opening schools is white privilege and like slavery. Forcing teachers to do their job is white privilege, according to this school board member. The public school system in this country, maybe the collapse of public education in this country because of the pandemic is actually a blessing in disguise. Destroying the public education system in America, the pandemic could be doing us all a favor. I personally think far better for a kid to not be in school and subjected to wokeism and being indoctrinated and coerced to join Boko Haram than to let them be home and watch TV. The fact that you have a University of Georgia educator who blasted Betsy DeVos for wanting kids to be able to go to private school and get a good education, while saying Joe Biden, he's a Democrat. He's good for schools because he's a Democrat and likes labor unions and transgender rights and racial justice policies. And his education secretary has strong beliefs in equity and justice. Kind of tells you why we should not be sending our kids to schools where the teachers have been taught by people like this. This person is right on the issue of standardized testing this year. But also, let's be honest here. If you do standardized tests this year, what it's going to expose is how badly public schools have failed kids. And maybe we do need to know just how bad the damage has been done by left-wing policies, because it's bad. It is really bad. My kids have been in school since August, in-person learning. They've had to shut the school down a couple of times and go to remote learning because of the virus, but only for a week or two at a time, and only, I think, 2 or 3 times. By and large, they've done in-person learning, and they've been able to do it just fine. In fact, private school kids are doing fine. And you know what's going to happen with this, don't you? You know what's going to happen is at some point, the Boko Haram is going to say, well, you people who got a good education now, we got to take it from you. We got to punish you and give it to other kids for equity. Remember, it's no longer about equality. Equality is we treat everybody the same. Equity is now we got to chop off the legs of the tall kids so we can make the short kids taller. That's what they're going to do to the kids whose parents have made sure they've gotten a good education. By the way, it's why they hate homeschoolers. One, because you don't get indoctrinated as a homeschooler into Boko Haram. And 2, you actually get an education. They don't like the fact that homeschoolers always do well and like the spelling bees and the math Olympics and stuff, because that it just means those kids can get a good education by not being educated by people who got taught by this progressive teacher of teachers. maybe we need to encourage more homeschooling. Maybe the pandemic is doing that.
There's not my truth or your truth. There is only
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. The Golden Globes has admitted it has no black voters. So the Hollywood Foreign Press Association is a bit of a scam. Years and years ago, let me explain this one to you. Years and years ago, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association was a bit of a scammy group. You could pretty much buy yourself an award. They wanted access to Hollywood. So basically a group of reporters got together, called themselves the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, started this organization, and you could essentially buy your way into an award. And they were smart enough over time to align themselves as an award show in the run-up to the Academy Awards, and it helped everybody. So nobody really called them out for some of the shady practices along the way. Well, this year, there are two movies. I haven't even heard of them. Defy Bloods and Judas and the Black Messiah. And the Hollywood Foreign Press Association snubbed them. They were expected, and it just doesn't seem to be. Well, Hollywood is upset now. Let me read you this. In 2019, this is from the Los Angeles Times. In 2019, more than 30 Hollywood Foreign Press Association members flew to France to visit the set of the new series Emily in Paris. While there, Paramount Network treated the group to a 2-night stay at the 5-star Peninsula Paris Hotel, where rooms start at $1,400 a night, and a news conference and lunch at the Musée des Arts Forains, a private museum filled with amusement rides dating back to 1850, where the show was shooting. Well, guess what? The Golden Globes seem to like that. And now Los Angeles Times is pointing out that you've got mysterious identities of its 87 members. They keep low profiles, but there are no black members. So the underlying current, you got to find, this is big Hollywood scandal, and I love this. That Hollywood has largely known that this was an inept, corrupt organization for a very long time. And they benefited from it. Essentially, they profited from the Golden Globes because the Golden Globes covered TV and film. And so then you head off to the Emmys and you head off to the Academy Awards, and it makes those even better. I mean, people who pay attention to this sort of stuff, they pay attention to who wins Best Picture from the Golden Globes because it gives you a sense of maybe who could win the Oscars. And, well, now it turns out that the Hollywood has totally bought into wokeness. And by buying into wokeness, now they got to be upset that the entity that they have used for years to help elevate the film industry turns out not to be very diverse. And the reason that they're doing this year is because the Golden Globes did not give enough people of color awards. This is, let me read you from the Washington Post. The 2021 nominees for the Golden Globe Awards were announced Wednesday morning, and an online buzz is already brewing about what many perceive to be egregious oversights, and in some cases, downright boring retreads. Former SNL stars Tina Fey and Amy Poehler are back to host the broadcast on NBC. This year marks the first. The broadcast is going bi-coastal. Fey will host the segments from Rockefeller Center's Rainbow Room in New York City.
30.
But Spike Lee, in his Netflix film, Da 5 Bloods, it's been awarded lots of awards, but it's been snubbed. So many others snubbed.
15.
They're horrified by it, but only because Hollywood's preferred movies this year got ignored. So it must be a lack of diversity that caused the problem. welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you'd like to be a part of the program, 877-973-7425. To the phones to take me to task, I'm told. Daniel, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mr. Erickson?
I'm good. Charlie says you think I'm painting too broad a brush.
A little bit. I mean, just I've been a public school educator for 16 years. Went to seminary a few years ago. Graduated from seminary in New Orleans. Now a bivocational pastor here in Twiggs County. Also, driving a school bus full time for the county and working a little part time at the private school here, just trying to stay involved in the community and building up the church and that type of stuff. But my kids are young, and so they're in the. We put them into the public school system here, the elementary school, which we've been very pleased with their teachers and the direction of the school and how they're going. And you're from the area, so you probably know the differences in Houston County, Jones, Twiggs, and
yeah,
those,
that is true. At the county level, there are differences. A buddy of mine listening over in Augusta says in Columbia County, the schools have been open all year, and that they're good. The public schools there are good, but you do have. It's not necessarily a Georgia phenomenon, but in Illinois or California, where at the county level you're not allowed to have the differences. Those are definitely, I think, problemed areas, particularly for people who can't afford to get out. Like California, for example, you've got rural parts of California where they're required by the state to have a transgender education in kindergarten, and right now they're all shut down anyway. So at least we live in a state that believes in letting each county control the education system.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think letting and obviously it starts from the top down. I mean, I think when President Trump was president, and even though not necessarily a huge fan of Betsy DeVos, because I think what she brought was more of a business sense, which maybe in today's environment we do need kind of more business sense, because me having been a teacher and coach, it's about relationships and stuff too, but we do need to educate our kids, and so maybe from that standpoint she brought a good business sense to the Department of Education. Now I do think with the pandemic and such, we need our kids in school, and obviously a lot of our communities in Georgia, I think Twiggs waited too long to come back to in-person school, although the virtual education they did as good a job as they could do with it being a poor rural area. I think they've done as good a job as they could have done. Again, I wish they would have gone back to school in person sooner, like our surrounding communities did. But I think part of that decision was it being a poor community, and a lot of the kids were raised by grandparents and things like that. So there was that fear there. But,
well, hey, let me ask you this, Daniel, about that. If they went to virtual learning, given friends of mine out in Twiggs and their constant laments about internet service there, how did that work?
They took the grants and stuff that they were able to get. They were able to provide hotspots for parents and for people who didn't have internet or good access to internet. I think they also could have maybe planned better, maybe working with some of the, like the public library here or something to maybe offer some services there. So, but I think a lot of it was, at least in this community, is virtual. Just my idea. Virtual learning is not the way to learn.
Correct.
It's just, to me, not to learn long term. Now, I did some online learning through seminary because I just was not in position to pick up and move to New Orleans. But online learning is just not, even for adults.
Yeah, listen, I got to tell you, I moved from Reformed Theological Seminary up in Marietta, their campus there, up to Southeastern Baptist to work on my PhD. And I got to go back to RTS because I am not self-disciplined enough to do remote learning as a 40-something-year-old. I'm terrible at it. I need to be in a classroom with an actual teacher and actual human beings around me.
Exactly. Me too. And I just think me having four elementary kids, you know where that goes.
Yes. Play daddy. Play daddy. Play daddy.
And I think too that maybe from a perspective, I understand getting senior citizens vaccinated. I understand that getting healthcare workers vaccinated, but I just really believe also that maybe there should have been some planning in place to put to get the educators maybe up the line first as well, because we do need our kids in school. And if that was such a sticking point, I guess in Chicago and San Francisco and those places, which again, those are the outliers and the crazy areas. We're fortunate to be in Georgia where it's a little more sane.
Yeah,
but,
I'm afraid that they're actually increasing the majority, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, teachers need to understand. I mean, even when we didn't have a pandemic, I rarely got sick, and trust me, I was in a locker room, half the time as well with smelly athletes who who weren't the cleanliest people. The few times that I got sick was likely from the school, from germs passed through school.
Yeah, so let me say this one on that regard. There is one of the things that I think we've got to deal with and recognize is how a lot of those teachers unions in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and the like, they just keep moving the goalposts. Because remember, originally it was we can't go back to school until we deal with the George Floyd racial equity situation. And now it's, well, also we need the shot. They just don't want to go back, it seems like.
Exactly. And I agree, because even, you have some outliers even in purple to red states like Georgia and stuff, that you have some outlier teachers that even here in Georgia. You mentioned one, the educator there at the University of Georgia blasting Betsy DeVos. I mean, you got that and stuff, but everywhere. But I think as a whole, at least here in Georgia, is all I can speak of, and in the Middle Georgia area, and a couple of the school systems I've worked in, I think teachers for the most part are have the right mindset.
There's definitely a cultural divide there. And Daniel, look, I got to leave you there. I appreciate the phone call, very much so. Thanks for taking the time to call in and to actually have a conversation about it. And you're right. There are cultural divisions. So here, for example, in Middle Georgia, we don't necessarily deal with the wokes like even some Atlanta schools do. And I got to tell you, in my experience, in the Atlanta area, it's the rich private schools that are worse than the public schools. But in vast parts of this country now, including places like Dallas, Texas, and Nashville, Tennessee, and all of California and Illinois, because of state mandates, local public school systems have bought into the social justice wokeness nonsense, and they're ruining kids. And we're fortunate here. And this is, we might as well have the metaphysical conversation that I've been putting off having. I don't know that this is sustainable. I really trust and believe in federalism. That California should be able to do this, even if I don't like it. And we should, here in Georgia, be able to not do it because we don't like it. But increasingly what we're seeing with the wokes, Woko Haram, is they are committed to destroying everyone's way of life unless we are down with their versions of social justice. And they're seeded by a postmodernism. Now, more and more people talk about postmodernism. My wife the other day was talking about deconstructionism. It's a word you hear a lot now in churches as people leave the faith. And what is it? Let me explain this to you, because you see it in your own life, even if you're not aware of it. It's creeping into all of our lives. Modernism, philosophically, modernism believes that there is objectivity, that there is truth, and that there can be certainty. Postmodernism is there can be no certainty, there is no objectivity, and there is no truth. Everyone has their individual truth. And what you see, and it's a propensity on the left and the right now, is to question everything and to hang your hat on the one time someone got something wrong or the one data point they got wrong and something overall factual to undermine the whole thing. Now, let's for most of my listeners, you're familiar enough with the Bible that I will, let me talk about deconstructionism. It is relevant to my wife's and my conversation the other day as well, because deconstruction is a key element in postmodernism. And again, postmodernism is doubt trumps certainty, subjectivity trumps objectivity, individual truth trumps the actual truth, which gives you to deconstructionism, which if you can't trust anything and there is no certainty, well, then words can mean what you want them to mean. And if words can mean what you want them to mean and there's no certainty, you can cast doubt. And if you can cast doubt, you can discredit. So let me fixate on one bit of this, the resurrection. Jesus used Jonah and the whale for 3 days as a precursor to his resurrection in the ground for 3 days. And if you want to cast doubt on the resurrection and the legitimacy of Christ's resurrection, well, he wasn't dead for 3 days. If he was put in the ground on Friday and he rose at sunrise on Sunday, it was really only 2 days. When you actually read, go back, look at the Greek, what you get is the third day. And the third day is put in the ground on a Friday. He was there all day Saturday. He rose on Sunday. That's the third day. Now, we in our society often reference being in the ground for 3 days. Well, you can cast doubt on that. Which one is it? How do you know? How do you know which one it is? Was it the third day, or is it 3 full days? Because if it's 3 full days, that doesn't work. And that the third day seems to contradict what the preacher says. And if the preacher can't be right, and you see little doubts along the way, how can this be? There are legitimate explanations for it. And most of it is, we commonly say 3 days, but it is the third day. Jonah went into the fish on 1 day and 2 days later came out, but the common way to refer to that at the time was 3 days. In the same way, at the same time, in the literary style of the day, if something happened on a Friday, modernists, they can deconstruct it and say, well, I can't really believe it because it doesn't line up with what the preacher says. And you have little things. But overwhelmingly, the people who did it were supporters of President Trump. And what you see from the conspiracists as well, but there was some Antifa there as well. So how do we know what we see in society now across the board is people want to doubt and undermine and get away from objectivity and truth and certainty to cast doubt, may not necessarily fully believe even that truth. It makes your head hurt when you think about it. Is the sky blue? It's not really blue. There's reflection, there's refraction. All of this gets back to the philosophical point. Well, you've got the left now believes that they can change the words of the Constitution so that what one day meant something, the next day means something completely different, but they haven't amended the Constitution. They've just changed good conservatism. They don't want us to read the words and determine what do the words mean at the time written. They want to decide hard to sustain this when no one can settle on objective truth anymore. And I believe there is a with postmodernism. But as more and more people distract from the faith and politics becomes their faith on both sides, even people who say it's not so, even people who say they're real Bible believers. And I don't know that the project that is the United States of America is sustainable as people begin to define that word too.
You're listening to the Erick Erickson Show.
I love this. I love it. I love it. Thank you to listener Neil sending this to me. Jamal Green. I don't know who Jamal Green is. Jamal Green. He's got a blue check mark on Twitter. Must be somebody. Boy dad, serial entrepreneur, civil rights advocate, ran for mayor of Chicago, former surrogate for Bernie Sanders. Oh, well, Georgia blue for Biden to airstrike Syria. We flipped Georgia blue for our $2,000 stimulus checks. Where's our check? We want our checks. One call, that's all. Oh, poor progressives. Your gas bills going up. The energy prices are going up. You need your $2,000 stimulus check. The Democrats right now are sabotaging their own COVID legislation. You had the Democrats. I mean, literally, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff had campaign buses riding around the state of Georgia saying, vote for them, you get $2,000. And now Joe Biden gets elected. Well, actually, it's going to be $1,400 because you already got the $600. It's not going to be $2,000. And the Democrats are like, the hell you say? Well, it's going to be $2,000 or else. We want more than that. And now he spent the money on missiles for Syria. Oh, poor Democrats. Seriously, we didn't flip Georgia blue for Biden to airstrike Syria. We want our $2,000 stimulus check. You may not get them. The Democrats are sabotaging themselves. They're trying to throw so much stuff in, and they can't get rid of the filibuster. They don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and Dianne Feinstein, and even at one point, Dick Durbin said, no, we're not getting rid of the filibuster. They're not getting rid of the filibuster. They don't want to get rid of the filibuster. Oh, my goodness gracious. Wow. This is going to be so fun to watch. See, because right now, here's the problem. The Democrats don't have Republicans to blame now. You know, I said yesterday that I did the entire opening monologue was focused on the Democrats say the Republicans are divided. It's a Republican civil war. Never mind that the Republicans are united across the board from only Trump to never Trump. The Republicans are united against the Democrats' COVID package. So the Democrats got to have every Democratic vote. And every time they add more stuff, they potentially undermine their own coalition to get COVID relief package passed. Every time they expand the package, it hurts them a little more. Like, for example, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin said, we're not going to do a $15 an hour minimum wage. They can't figure out how to get this thing passed. In the House, you can ram it through. In the House, they got the numbers barely to just ram it through.
30.
But in the Senate, they got to have all hands on deck. From the media,